I'm Mark Callan, Mr. Saltwater Tank, coming to you on behalf of SaltwaterAquarium.com. Rolling out a new video series today called Comparisons. In this video series, I'm going to do just that. I'm going to compare different types of gear, and talk about the pros and cons of each of them, and show you how I put them to work in real-world scenarios. Now, there's more equipment available to aquarium hobbyists today than ever before. There's literally millions of choices out there. How do you narrow down your buying decision and choose what's right for you and your tank? Well, in this series, I'm going to talk about that, talk about why I chose different types of gear, where I would put different types of gear to help you narrow down your decision. And along the way, I'm probably going to get some calls from some manufacturers as well, but that's all right. First up, the AI Orbit 4 and the AI Nero 7. Now wait a minute. Both of these power heads come from the same company, AquaIlluminations. So why am I comparing two products from the same company? Because part of the point of the comparisons video series is to look at the different uses of different versions of the same type of gear. In this episode, we've got two different types of power heads. They're both power heads, but they're vastly different. We have an AI Orbit 4, which is a gyre type power head. It's longer, it's skinnier, it kicks out flow mainly in a flat plane. Compare that to the AI Nero 7, which is more like a traditional power head. It's round in shape, kicks out flow in a cylinder. So I'm going to look at both of these. I'm going to give you my feedback, how I look at them based on my experience of building and maintaining saltwater tanks in real world scenarios, not just tanks built for shiny YouTube studios. So with that, let's have a look at the pumps. The Nero pump comes in three different sizes with recommended tank size of 2.5 gallons. Yes, you heard that right. 2.5 gallons to 60 gallons for the Nero 3, 40 to 100 gallons for the Nero 5, and 80 to 500 gallons plus for the Nero 7. How's that for range? 80 to 500 gallons plus. Buy one pump, keep it across multiple tanks. Maximum flow ratings are 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 gallons per hour respectively. The AI Orbit comes in two flavors with no flow ratings provided, so for the Orbit we have to go with a recommended tank size of 20 to 88 gallons for the Orbit 2 and 20 to 120 gallons for the Orbit 4. Maybe one day we'll get an Orbit 6 with a tank size of 120 gallons to 1,000 plus. Both the Nero 7 and the Orbit 4, which I'm using for this video, have guards to help keep out small fish and sea anemones. Both work with glass thicknesses up to just over 3/4 of an inch thick. Both pumps are easy to service. The Orbit's fan guards and fans come off very easily, and there are no small parts to lose because we all know if there's small parts, they're going to get lost. Each side of the Orbit is color-coded on both the guard and the fan itself, so you can't get sides mixed up unless you're really not paying attention. The Nero's guard easily pops off and the blade comes out easily as well. No tools needed, and there's no prying for any of this either. Price point on the Nero 7 is $329 and the Orbit 4 is $319, which is essentially the same. Let's talk control. The Orbit has more control over the direction of flow, as you can direct the nozzles through a greater angle than the Nero. The Nero does have some flexibility in how you want to direct the flow, so that's a plus as well. The included controllers are exactly the same. You can control the pumps manually with the included controller, or set up multiple pumps to work together through the My AI or Mobius app. While apps are great, when I'm setting up schedules using my phone, I find myself often getting frustrated. It's hard to get the points exactly where I want them. Interface can be a little hard with big fingers on a small device. Now a tablet is a little bit better, but for me, I find it's way easier to use a computer where I can use a mouse and I can just point and click. Now, as of the making of this video, there's no desktop version of the My AI or Mobius app, so to use my computer and point and click to set up the schedules for either the Orbit or the Nero, I have to use Apex Fusion, which is going to require an MXM box connected to a Neptune Systems Apex. Now, before someone takes that the wrong way and saying you need to buy more gear to make these pumps work, not true, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for me, the simplest way I found to set up more complex schedules is to use a computer. If you want to set up a schedule with the Nero or with the Orbit, maybe even add some complexity to it, you can easily do that with the apps. And if you don't like tech at all, well, you can just use the built-in physical controller on either of these pumps and your tank will be just fine. If If you're a reef junkie like me, you want to really dive into things, set up multiple pumps, have them working together, change things multiple times throughout the day. You get the point here. This is high-level type stuff. I'm looking for a desktop type of environment for that. The Orbit has a reverse flow setting, and it is exactly what it sounds. The pump runs backwards, and when it does that, it pulls water from the top of your tank and pushes it down. Only the gyre type of pumps have this capability, and the Orbit is one of those pumps. Like, look, with the Nero, it's just not gonna make sense. You run it backwards, it's gonna pull flow straight into the pump and then smash it against whatever it's sitting on, whether it be an overflow box or a pane of glass. It just doesn't make sense to do that. But with the Orbit, since we can turn those nozzles, we can pull it from the top and I can push it down. That's exactly what I'm doing in my step-down tank. Now, don't get taken out that this is 4 feet deep. Even if your tank was only 24 inches deep, you can still use the reverse feature. So I'm pulling water from the top and then I'm pushing it down to the bottom of the drop-off section of my tank. I've always said variety is the spice of life, especially when it comes to flow. If you've got the capability to change up your flow patterns, by all means do it. And the reverse flow setting is very useful. It's one of the reasons the Orbit is on my 987-gallon tank, and I use that reverse setting frequently throughout the day. Based on my experience, in what scenarios would I use each type of pump? First up, the Orbit 4. Standout is if you're looking for a reverse flow. You want to have that capability in your power head. Only the Orbit and these gyre type pumps have that capability. And with the software, it's really easy to enable that, have that show up certain times of the day when you want to mix up your flow. Also, if you wanted this in a vertical type operation where you get flow running like a wall down your tank, say like you had a corner overflow behind your rockwork, you could put the Orbit there and shoot it down the back of your tank without having to use multiple power heads. And since the flow is more in a straight line like a wall, we don't have to worry so much about the flow spreading out and hitting the rocks. So vertical application, Orbit's the clear winner here. Also, if you wanted a flatter, wider flow, like for wider tanks like on mine, I have two traditional power heads on the end of the tank. I have some space between them, and I said, look, I could just add another power head. I'm gonna put the Orbit here to help flatten out the flow, fill in that gap between power heads, and give me smooth flow across the top of the tank down my corals. Which brings in another great use of the Orbit, frag tanks. You have a frag tank, you don't want to have one power head just pushing mainly in the center and leaving the sides with less flow. The Orbit's going to fill in those holes, give you more flat laminar flow all the way across the top of your corals. You could also argue that one Orbit takes the place of two Nero pumps because the Orbit is so wide, it takes up the space of two Neros, so you're getting per se twice as wide a flow. Now, if you went over to the side of the argument of looking at how much flow you're getting, it's not gonna hold weight at that point because the Orbit doesn't kick out near as much flow as the Nero 7. But if you want that wide flow, Orbit's gonna make sense for you. Overall, I'm happy with the Orbit. That's why I'm using one on my tank. Before I talk about the use of the Nero 7, you're gonna get distracted by that thing. That's an acclimation box. I use this when I'm putting new fish in my tank to help them ease into the tank, or as my friend Laura calls it, a hidey-ho box. Now, I talked about that with her in previous video episodes, so we'll include the link to that down in the description. So don't look at the box, look at me. All right, when am I gonna use the Nero 7? Couple key points. One, when I wanna throw flow farther, like in my tank. I have a 12-foot tank. Now, I'm not saying you can throw flow 12 feet long with the Nero, not gonna happen. The point is, I want to cover more distance with a power head. In this case, I'm gonna go with the Nero because it's gonna tend to shoot it farther because it's more in that cylinder as opposed to the flat plane. So when I want to try to shoot flow farther, that's one place I'm gonna use the Nero. Also, if I flat out want more flow, this thing cranks out more flow than the Orbit 4, so if I want more flow, I'm gonna go with the Orbit. Also, if I'm less concerned about direction of flow, now there's some give and take with the Nero 7 in terms of you can angle the flow, but not near as much as the Orbit. So if you know for the most part the flow's just gotta go straight, you're willing to give up some freedom with that, the Nero is gonna make more sense for you there. There you have it. There's our comparison between the AI Nero and the AI Orbit. Tell us what you think in the comments below, and of course, like and subscribe.